Today's lesson is on vocational vocabulary. In this lesson, we'll be learning about hourly wage, gross pay, and net pay. If you hear something in the background, I apologize. It's my dog, and he's drinking water. All right, so hourly wage and gross and net pay. What in the world does that mean? Well, hourly wage is pretty straightforward. So most entry-level jobs are paid according to the state hourly wage. So the hourly wage is how much money you earn for every hour that you are scheduled and working. Okay. So if you think of the phrase time is money, hourly wage is literally that. It's how much you're paid per hour of work. So in California, as of this year, 2021, the hourly wage is $14 an hour for businesses with 26 or more employees. If you have under 26 employees, it is $13 an hour. However, this is also subject to local city ordinances. So depending on where you live, sometimes the hourly wage is higher in cities that have a higher cost of living. So if you live and work in San Francisco in an entry-level job, you're going to earn $16.07 per hour. If you live and work in Pasadena, or rather, I guess if you work in Pasadena, you don't necessarily have to live there, right? But if you work in Pasadena and you're working an entry-level job, you're going to earn $15 an hour. So you'll earn more. However, it's also more expensive to live in these areas. So some people commute to work in these places, but again, living in that area in general tends to cost more. So they have voted legislation such that beginning in 2019 and ending in 2023, the state hourly wage will go up from $11 to $15, okay? So that's $15 regardless of whether you have 25 or 26 employees, okay? So by the time January 2023 rings around, if you're working in an entry-level position, you'll be earning $15 an hour, which really is commensurate with the cost of living in California since it is more expensive. So right now we are at 2021. So again, if you work for a place that does not have a lot of employees, you'll earn $13 an hour. And more likely, if you work at an establishment or business that has 26 or more employees, you will earn $14 an hour. So when you begin working, you'll be given a work schedule that details your work hours for the week and for the month. It's really important to keep track of this document on your own end so that you can make sure you are being paid for all of the time you spend working on the clock. So Miss Morris, back when I was in high school and I was working, I made sure to keep track of how often I went to work and how many hours I worked on a separate document, just in case there were any discrepancies between what I had and what my employer had. So sometimes you may be asked to work later than your scheduled shift. Make sure to document this, okay? Make sure that they understand that you aren't working just because you are working and getting paid. You're not staying after, as like a friendly service to someone. No, you're on the clock still. So if you work beyond 8 hours in a day, you can qualify for overtime pay for any additional time after the 8 hours. So if you work 10 and a half hours, you would earn minimum wage for the first 8 hours. And then for the remaining 2.5 hours, you would be paid at time and a half of whatever your hourly wage is. So if the hourly wage is $14 and that's how much you earn, you would earn 14 times 1.5. That would be how much you'd be paid for that 2.5 hours that you worked above and beyond what you were scheduled to. And so this is good, although again, it gets taxed a little higher, unfortunately. So let's review, all right? So this is called gross pay. Gross pay is basically the hours worked times how much you make an hour. So let's say that John works at Burger King and his hourly wage is $8.50, which is really low, right, by our standards now in California. Last week, he worked 30 hours. What is John's gross pay? Gross pay, again, this is before any deductions have been taken out. This is before taxes. This is just how many hours you worked multiplied by how much you make an hour. So you would multiply 30, which is how many hours he worked, times his wage, his hourly wage, which is $8.50. So 30 times $8.50 equals $255. Now, that is not necessarily what you would take home. Okay, so there's a really big difference between your gross pay and your net pay. And that's because of things like taxes and deductions like Social Security, Medicare, things like that. All right. So, as I said, gross pay is simply the amount of hours you worked multiplied by your hourly wage. Gross pay simply states how much you earned before state and federal taxes, as well as other deductions have been taken out. So this is not your take home or net pay. Gross pay is used to calculate how much you will have to pay in taxes and deductions based on how much money you currently make. All right, so if you're earning no money, you're not going to get taxed on anything. But once you start earning money, you will be taxed for every dollar that you earn up to whatever your tax bracket is, which if you're working an entry-level job won't be that much, thankfully. All right, so net pay is how much you actually take home. That's how much gets deposited in your account. So once you start working, it's always a good feeling knowing that you can be independent and, you're making your own money. But when you receive your first paycheck, you might be super alarmed and afraid and wondering, where did all of my money go? I definitely encountered that my first year teaching. It was, a learning experience. So no need to worry. Your net pay is your take home pay, and it's the total amount that will be deposited into your account after state and federal taxes, as well as payroll deductions, which your employer takes out or the government takes out for you, such as health insurance, Social Security, etc. So you might feel sad or upset about this, but please know that taxes go towards keeping our communities running and safe. So taxes actually help pay for schools and make sure that, students have all the materials they need and teachers get paid and whatnot. And so, so you are contributing to the greater good, and you will often receive a good amount of this money back during tax season. So it can be discouraging, surely, to see that so much money is being taken out. But just know that you'll probably get a lot of this money back during taxes. All right, so this is just a little visual for calculating net pay. Net pay is basically your gross pay. Remember, that's your hourly wage times the hours that you worked, minus any deductions. So common deductions are Social Security tax, Medicare tax, which is healthcare, federal income tax, which goes to the government, right? The United States government, and then there's a state tax, which may or may not be applicable to you depending upon how much you earn in your state. And then there's local income taxes that again go towards your community. All right. So there is a website that you can log on to that will help you to calculate your gross pay or from your hourly wage. So I'll go ahead and click this link. And it won't record, unfortunately. So it's called calculatorsoup.com, and it's the financial gross pay calculator. So this one, again, is really easy because you would just multiply your hours worked times your hourly wage. But once you start working overtime, you might lose track of how much you're earning. So if you plug in, your hours worked, the hourly wage, and then any overtime you worked, and then the overtime pay, it will help calculate it nicely for you so that you can keep track of all the values. All right.